been nice getting up earlier with the sun shining and staying out later. Just a little bit of, feels like a little bit of new life. Awesome. Well, we have covered some ground so far in our spiritual formation series, right? I'd say we're about halfway through. We're going to work through it in April as well a little bit, but we've just been kind of looking at these spiritual practices that we can implement into our lives that kind of make space for God, right? That through these practices, we're making space to be with God, to know God, to be transformed by God. And so we're kind of looking at how can we make more space in our lives to be with Jesus. And so it's my hope that as we've been working through this series, that we have been finding ourselves, engaging with these practices and maybe finding some new life in our spiritual journey. Maybe we're finding God in new ways as we're kind of engaging with these practices. Maybe it's some topics that we've covered so far, thankfulness. Maybe you're finding just more of the presence of the Lord as you engage with thankfulness, or worshiping God through music on your own time, or Victoria spoke on contemplation and entering into that, or maybe some of us are now kind of implementing Sabbath into our lives and finding some rest and some peace as we engage with that. And then a couple weeks ago, Vern spoke on the spiritual journey. And so it was really helpful to kind of see these different stages that we walk through as Christians. And so maybe as we saw that and worked through some of the questions that Vern gave us, that we were able to kind of, locate ourselves on that journey. And for some of us, it may feel like, we've been stuck at a certain stage for a while. I know I've been there. And then for some of us, maybe we are experiencing some movement in it, because we are meant to progress along that journey. We're not meant to stay in any particular stage, except for kind of the last one, which is just like this life of love. So we engage with these practices to experience movement, to progress forward, because God is the one who shapes us and molds us. That is his work. But we are not complacent in the process, right? We are partnering with God. We are actually active participants in our own discipleship, right? We're not just thinking, oh, it'll get done. God will do what God's going to do. Like, no, we are actually partnering with God through the power of his Spirit that is in us to move forward towards a goal. And so that goal for us as Jesus followers is always Jesus. He is the goal. He is the end. He is why we are in this. So I hope that we're getting across through this series that we're not trying to perfect these practices. We're not trying to nail these practices down and get them right. But that as we work through this series, we are... The practices are just a pathway to our goal. The practices are the pathway to Jesus, to experience more of him. And they are tools that help us to participate in our own spiritual journey and in our formation. Because if the practices are just an end in themselves, like we're going through the motions and we're trying to check boxes and we're trying to sort of get it right, that's just going to be empty religion. It's going to be superficial. There's not going to be any real sort of inward transformation, because it kind of stays on the surface. And if we're just here at church, to check a box, if we're just worshiping God or practicing Sabbath to say, I'm a good Christian and I can do it right, then we're really just kind of playing a part in some play where church is just, I got to play this church game, right? When I first started following Jesus in my 20s, my early 20s, there was so much beauty in the ways that Jesus met me, and I found the Lord, and there was so much beauty there. But there was this other part of it where I started going to church, and I thought I just was like trying to fit in, and I found myself pretending a lot, or like everything is good, and I am this good Christian girl, but like underneath the surface, that wasn't my experience, and I really just wasn't being real, and so I just kind of played that game for a long time. And at this stage of my life, it's like I want the real thing. I want the real Jesus. I want to truly experience him, and I want to be real and authentic as well. So I don't want to just have this fruit that looks good on the outside, where you're experiencing me in some sort of like, oh, Megan's so nice, she's so kind, but then I get home and I'm actually kind of rotten, right? You know, Megan, she seems really nice, but if you get to know her, turns out she was just pretending. That was an act. She was hiding behind this performance. And I've been there, I've done that, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And Jesus has something different for us. This is not the life that Jesus has for us in terms of following him and being with him. So Victoria already hit the nail on the head this morning in Matthew 11, and I'm going to read it in the Message translation. Jesus says, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you will learn to live freely and lightly." See, the other option, this whole game, this whole pretending or faking it kind of thing, is it's forced. It feels forced, like we're kind of pushing water up a hill. But Jesus says he has this way of living that is unforced and light and easy. A way to experience him and find real life. For me, when I read this, it's this invitation that Jesus sets before us to sort of come out of hiding. To step out of pretending and covering up and having this mask on where no one can see the real me. This is an invitation to be real and authentic and to experience freedom. So I'll read it in the NIV where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened." This word burden, like when I say that word, it's like I can feel it. It's so heavy. It weighs us down, and it actually keeps us from moving forward, these burdens that we carry. And these burdens are just layers and layers and layers of stuff that we carry that cover us up. And we all have layers. Layers of expectations that others have put on us, that we've grown up believing, layers of stuff that we've put on ourselves. We all kind of have this ideal version, like there's this ideal version of Megan, and I keep trying to live up to her, and I keep failing. And I'm a heavy burden. I'm trying to move because I'm trying to be like that, pretending that I am like that. We carry around these layers of stuff like be this, do this, say this, look like this, act like this, so that we can sort of present the best version of ourselves to the world, right? And then so for me, it's like, where does the pretending Megan, the person that I try to be and want others to see that I am, where does she end? And where does the real Megan begin? Like, who am I, right? Like, we just kind of get lost, and it's like, what's real and what's not? We live in this world where, like, everyone is out there. Seems like everyone is on display. Like, everyone's just putting themselves out there with social media. Putting this sort of person out there that may not even really actually exist. Where we've got, we put pictures out there of all the happy stuff and the great stuff and boasting and I'm doing this and I do that. And it's like, but what's actually behind the picture? Or we've got all these filters now, where I can actually put a picture out there that doesn't actually represent what I look like. Filters to cover up our flaws and imperfections to actually make our faces look different than they are. And a lot of what we're seeing, not all of it, but a lot of what we're seeing is a facade, right? It's this kind of illusion. And we're hiding ourselves behind ourselves, like this ideal version of what we should be like. And at some point, and I'm going to say midlife, it's kind of where I am right now, we break under the weight. At some point, we are tired. And we're just like, I can't do this anymore. At some point, we're like, I can't hold all these layers of this false self that I hide behind. It's too much. I'm tired. I'm worn out. And so sometimes, actually, we even go so long pretending that we have completely lost ourselves, but we want to start this journey into authenticity, but we're like, where do I begin? How do I begin this part of my journey? How do I find myself? In Jeremiah 23, God says, "Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord. Do not I fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord." Who can hide from me? God says, no one. It's impossible. All things are laid bare before him. And so with him, there's no pretending or hiding, right? He sees underneath all the layers that have been piled on top of us as we've journeyed through life. He sees all the burdens that we carry, but he knows what is underneath. And so when we lose ourselves, God is the one who comes and helps us find ourselves because he knows us and nothing is hidden from him. He is the one who seeks the lost, right? That's who he is. He seeks the lost. And so when we are lost, he finds us. And in the process, we find him. So he takes off all these layers that we hide behind. And I want to look at this morning how through the practice of prayer and fasting that we can step into this journey of removing some layers and take off our masks. So Jesus teaches about prayer in the Sermon on the Mount. And he says, when you pray, you mustn't be like the play actors. They love to pray standing in the synagogues and on street corners so that people will notice them. I'm telling you the truth, they have received their reward in full. Have you ever found yourself praying and you're like, if I say this, this will sound good to the people that are hearing me? If I say it like this, that'll make me sound uber spiritual. if, it's like, or have you ever heard like these preachy kind of prayers? Or are they even talking to God? Are they directing that at me? I don't know. Jesus says, don't be like that. And on fasting, he says, when you fast, do not look miserable as the actors and hypocrites do when they are fasting. They walk around town putting on airs about their suffering and weakness, complaining about how hungry they are, so everyone will know they are fasting. They don't wash or anoint themselves with oil, pink their cheeks, or wear comfortable shoes. Those who show off their piety, they have already received their reward in full. So there are people going around that are pretending, making a show of it, of their spirituality, but it was all just an act. None of it was real. They were pretending. It looked like they were holy, but they weren't actually seeking God in the process. They were seeking to elevate themselves. And Jesus has this to say about this group of people. He says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are like whitewashed tombs who look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." Kind of these harsh words for this group of people that wanted to present themselves to others to make themselves look good, but there was nothing sort of real behind it. They're just covered in layers of fake spirituality, hiding themselves from other people, who they really were, and worse, hiding themselves from God behind their religious acts. And because of that, because they weren't seeking God in the process, they were really checking boxes to make sure they were these good sort of religious people. They were unable to be shaped and formed. Jesus is like, if you really want to be with me, be shaped and formed, he teaches us how to pray. He says, when you pray, go into your room, shut the door, and pray to your Father who is there in secret. And he says, when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face so it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. That there is prayer and fasting, these practices that we enter into that nobody knows about, that nobody can see. It's this secret place that we go to, that Jesus tells us to go to. In Psalm 139, David says, "My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth." And he talks about how God shaped him and formed him in the womb where no one could see. It's like, so God shapes us and forms us in this secret place, this place where we go with him, that no one else can really notice. And here's the way the upside down kingdom works. You have to enter into hiding to come out of hiding. You've got to go into the secret place to live with no secrets. There's got to be a place that we can go where we can learn and be transformed to be real and authentic. Through prayer and fasting, this is where God can begin to remove these layers from us. And this is how, in the Message translation, it said like this: find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simply and honestly as you can manage. Find a place, have a place where you can be with the Lord, where you can be real, where you can be honest, where you can take off the layers, take off the mask, and just be with God simply and honestly. A place where we can go to, where we got to get real with ourselves, where we can face ourselves in the presence of God and just simply be there with him. In Matthew 6, Jesus says, the world is full of so-called prayer warriors who are prayer ignorant. They are full of formulas and programs and advice, peddling techniques for getting what you want from God. Don't fall for that nonsense. This is your Father you are dealing with, and he knows better than you what you need. In the beginning of kind of my spiritual walk, I didn't know what I was doing or what this whole thing was kind of about. And so I would read different books and read Christian television, and I believed what I was told. I just kind of took it at face value. If you pray like this, if you take these certain scriptures and declare them every day throughout your day, if you say these words, if you do these actions, then you will get results. Then God will hear you. Then God will see you. And it pretty much broke me. Because I was like, this isn't happening. I don't get it. And it felt so manufactured. It felt so forced. I felt like I was putting on a show for God. Here Jesus is saying there is a secret place for you to go where you are fully known. He sees all of you. And in that place you are fully loved and you are told to come there. No matter where you're at, where you can be free from pretending. In Psalm 31, the psalmist says, your overflowing goodness you have kept for those who live in awe of you, and you share your goodness with those who make you their sanctuary. You hide them, you shelter them in your presence. It doesn't say he has stored up judgment or condemnation or rejection for those who come into his sanctuary. He has goodness to pour out on us when we come to him. When we hide in him, when he is our refuge. So the more time we actually spend with God, the more space we make for God to be with him in prayer very simply and honestly, the easier it is to come out of hiding with the rest of our lives. Because if we're going to be real with God, we've got to be real with ourselves. We have to face ourselves and get honest. And the more we practice this in a safe place with the Lord, the more we learn how to do that in this world. The more we experience his love and acceptance, even in our brokenness and our sin and our hiding, the more we can experience of his love, the safer it feels to be out in the world and just be ourselves. So what we practice in the secret determines the direction of our lives. What goes on behind closed doors ends up shaping us and molding us and makes us who we are. See, I go to spin. It's my outlet. I go almost every day. I just go there and I just sweat it out. And it's kind of just like my little escape that I do. I do it for my mental health and also my physical health. And one of the coolest things about it is it's in the dark. And so I'm on the bike and it's dark and no one can see my effort. No one can see how much tension I'm putting on that bike. No one can see what I'm putting into it. Now, I could go there like I do most days, and I could fake it. I mean, I've gotten kind of good at pretending to put more tension on. But I could fake it. I could make it look like I'm really going for it, and it's really hard, and I'm progressing. Like I could make it look like that. But if I do that, there will be no growth. There'll be no change. There'll be no progression in my physical journey. So we can do what we want behind closed doors. We can be whoever we are. And then we can come and just fake it. Fake being a good Christian or that we're engaging in the practices or whatever. We could just fake whatever. But there will be no growth. There'll be no movement. There'll be no deepening of our relationship with Jesus. We won't actually begin to know him more and more. We're just kind of hiding. And so God sees us anyway. He sees it all, and we're fooling ourselves if we think that, oh, he can't see this part of it. And if I don't say it out loud, then that means it's not real or God can't see it. So we might as well just get on with it. We might as well just bring him into all of it, no matter what it is. Like, God, you are here with me at all times, in all things. So it's better just to be real. And through that, experience his love. And then Jesus goes on to talk about fasting. There's prayer, and then there's also fasting. Fasting is simply the practice of denying ourselves. And as Christians, this is something that we should practice often. We should be good at denying ourselves. Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. If you want to follow me, you must deny yourself. This is stepping into God's will for our lives. This is doing. Thanks. So when we fast, it is this the practice of just surrendering, right? Surrendering ourselves to God and actually turning to God and away from distractions. So we have so many distractions, so many things that pull us away. Whether it's food or entertainment, phones, technology, shopping, hobbies, addictions. There's so many things in our lives that enable us to hide from God. So many things that we run to cover up, to numb. Layers of stuff that we use to escape from ourselves and from God. And so when we fast, we are actually able to remove some of those layers. We can't hide anymore behind whatever it is that we're sort of giving up, you know? With every hunger pain, it's like pointing to our hunger for God. It drives us to him and to his presence, to be sustained by him. With every urge that we have to open our phones or turn on our TV or go buy this and have this, it's like we are denying ourselves, we're turning away from that, and instead turning to God in prayer. And when we can deny ourselves some of these things, it's like we have to just really face who we are. Peter says to the Lord after Jesus is like, is this too hard for you? Are you going to leave too? He says, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Where am I going to go? Am I going to run to that store, to my phone, to this, to that? Am I going to run to all these places that I think hold life for me? Or am I going to run to you? So Peter says, there's nowhere else. There's nothing else I have but you, because you hold the life that I need. And so when we fast, we're kind of ceasing from things that we think satisfy us, or the things that we're using to just fill some sort of void. When we fast, we can kind of just face this emptiness that we have, and that only Christ can fill it. So you can pray without fasting, and you should, but you cannot fast without praying, right? It's like you can't just like, oh, I'm not going to eat breakfast and then go do something else, or I'm not going to look at my phone today, but I'm going to go do some other things. When we fast, we pray. We get into the secret place to be with God. Jesus says in Mark 9, when the disciples are struggling to cast out a demon, he says, this can only come out by prayer. Other translations say this can only come out by prayer and fasting. There are strongholds in our lives, lies that we believe, things that hold us and chain us, ground that the enemy has taken, that God wants to give back to us. But we can only get there through prayer, through denying ourselves, through turning away from distractions and being with Jesus and experiencing the real Jesus and having this authentic Christian experience. And there's a promise in it. Jesus says, your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. All these things that we think of, oh, I could use this, I could use this. We're not told exactly what the reward is, but I like to think that it's Jesus himself, because he's the goal, right? Like that's what we're in this for. He says, get away with me and you'll recover your life. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. That sounds like a reward. You'll find yourself. You'll find me. You'll find freedom. In Colossians 3, Paul says, your new real life is hidden with Christ in God. Who you are, your true identity, is only discovered by being with Jesus and in his presence and being found in him. If we're lost, we get found in him. And the only way to kind of get there is to be with him. If he's got my life, if it's in him, I want to be with him. And so this week, just thinking, how can we engage with this? With prayer and having this secret place, we can go to that place with God anytime. And just right now, we could close our eyes and just be in that secret place. But Jesus is talking about like a physical location. Go to your room, close the door. There's this place that is held for us that we can go to, whether it's in your car or going for a walk where no one can hear you or see you, or maybe your closet or your bathroom. There's got to be a place that we have that we can go to, or we just need to get there because we just got to get real with God. We just need to be with him. So do you have that place? Can you create that place? So as you go through your week, maybe just asking the Lord, where is this place? God, where can I go to just get alone with you? And even asking God, what am I using? What are the layers that I'm using to hide behind, or the things I'm using to numb that I could deny myself of to just experience more of you? There's this hymn that I've been listening to, What a Friend We Have in Jesus. It says, what peace we often forfeit, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. What kind of stuff are we walking around with where we could just go to be with God and release it and experience his rest and his peace? I'm going to pray for us as we close this morning. I'm also going to ask some of our team to come up and be available for prayer as well. So, yeah, Lord, help us to find ourselves, to find you. Help us to take off these layers, to be vulnerable. Help us to be real with you and with ourselves. Lord, would you show each of us a place that we can go, a place that you have for us where we can just simply be with you. And I ask that you would show each of us this week certain things that we could fast from, distractions that could be removed so that we can experience more of you.